One of the things I have recognized being speakers, everyone thinks I have a plan on everything. So I'm like, oh, I do. I'm working on that. I will be honest, the Senate President and I have started to talk about how do we solve this problem. And I think I mentioned in a previous media avail that part of the goal is to buy down the rate increases. We're going to have rate increases in PERS. We have a pretty large unfunded debt. The question is, are they going to be 5 or 6%, or are they going to be 2 or 3%? And so we're trying to figure out what kind of financing mechanisms and additional dollars can we put towards buying down the rate increases over the next several biennia. I think you see that in the governor's proposal, similar kind of goal. I think there's a lot of complexities in the proposal that she put forward, and I'm still looking at it. One of the things that I spent the weekend thinking about was SAIF, because one of the things we'll need to know to do if we're going to buy down any of the rates is probably have some one-time money. I wanted to share, I don't know, did you all notice we all got a binder on Friday? The governor's team handed out a binder. One of the things that was in that binder on PERS was a document that talked about the dividends as a percent of premium by state. So these are the different workers' comp programs in other states and how much of what their premiums go into dividends. At the very top of the list, the complete outlier is the state of Oregon. In 2017, the dividend was 22.89%. 23% of direct premiums went back in a dividend. That is the national average is like 2.5%. So we are definitely an outlier in what we returned in terms of dividends. So let's look at the surplus and SAIF. Do we want to take all of that reserve? Absolutely not. Should a portion of it go towards this crisis? Absolutely. Because if we're going to have a shared responsibility approach to dealing with this, the fact that SAIF has that large of reserves, that we have been told actuarially they don't need that level of reserves, what portion of that can go to help the broader issue that the state is facing, which is the PERS rate increases. So I think it's a very legitimate conversation to talk about one-time dollars from SAIF. And we also, in our binder, got the DOJ opinion of whether or not that was legal. I think it's a pretty good opinion that says, yes, on a one-time basis, we could take some of that reserves to help us with our PERS problem.
What about the other aspects of the plan?
I am still looking at it because, I think the one piece I don't totally understand the dynamics is how you could just address the rates for schools. That whole mechanism of setting up a separate fund, because probably what we need to do is whatever we end up trying to do, it should pay down the rates for all public services, not just schools, because we're having a problem in human services, local government, everybody's having the same kind of problem. So I think the one disagreement I would have with the governor at this point is making sure that the rates benefit all services, not just schools, because everyone has the same problem right now.
I was struck by the fact that nobody responded or indicated anything to the governor during the meeting. And how should we interpret that?
Well, I don't think we knew exactly what all the details were until a couple hours before, and given the political nature of the discussion, it was probably wise to maybe go home and do our homework before we make comments. I'm still in homework stage. I'm still looking at trying to make sense of it.
If you're trying to address the rate increases for everyone, not just for schools, are you looking to spread that SAIF money around to all of those, or get more money from SAIF or more money from other places to be able to address more people?
Well, I think the more we can get towards the entire rate increase that's connected with the unfunded liability, that helps, state governments, helps schools, helps local government. The SAIF money from the reserves could be a one-time infusion, and that's what I think you see in the governor's plan. It's like, let's get some one-time pots of money.
Right.
It's probably the most politically viable compared to, say, the kicker, which I think is a much more complicated pot of money to access. Even though I support doing that, I think it's just harder to do because you need a different vote count. But on the SAIF side, one of the other things that has come up, and I can't remember if this was in her presentation, this idea that perhaps the costs that school districts have to pay for their workers' compensation, because they have workers' compensation costs as well. Does SAIF kind of, forego their costs for the next couple biennium, because that could help school districts have lower overall costs. So between the reserves and that, I think those are important benefits for schools.
What do you think about, and I'm forgive me if I'm a little bit off on this because I wasn't the reporter that wrote about it, but taking some IAP instead of the money going to IAP, have that go into the pension fund.
I think that's a lot more challenging, primarily because that IEP contribution that employers and employees are making now was part of the 2003 PERS reforms. So I worry about the legality of it. I think that's kind of an unknown. More importantly for me, though, is if we are going to ask state employees to help contribute to the pension fund to help deal with the problem, it's not just their responsibility to do that. I think you can only approach that if you have a shared, balanced, fair approach. So you must take a lot of different things into consideration, I think, to help buy down the rates, not just employee contributions. So I know that's a topic that's out there, but for me, how can we do that and not do SAIF? How can we do that and maybe not do the kicker? How could we do that and maybe, not ask employers to contribute more to buying down their individual employer unfunded liabilities? So I want to make sure whatever we propose is balanced and fair across the board. And that could, at some point, maybe involve employee contributions, but only if it's fair, balanced with other things. Right now, all you hear from the business community is it's just employees should pay more.
Well, I'm talking
And
about
I don't
the
think that's
context
fair.
of the governor's plan, though, where she
Right.
was talking about a whole list of things, and that would be one of those. So if you're doing a bunch
True.
of those multiple other things, we have more one time, we have all these different sources coming in. Should that also be a source?
Well, the irony of that is that SAFE's a really good example. The business community for years now has said we need to deal with our unfunded liability. The minute we talk about something they see as their own pot of money, they're like, oh, well, you can't take SAFE, because that's not fair. So what I would worry about is we'd march down a path on a variety of solutions, and then the only ones left standing are the employee contributions. And that would be unacceptable. So that's my concern about what the governor's put out, because only the business community seems to like one part of that, which is the
It's
employee
interesting how some things get left standing, because then I'm thinking back to the grand bargain, and a part of that, of course, got struck down in the courts.
Mm-hmm. But
And the
again,
rest is still
the fact that we were able to reduce cost of living adjustments going forward has actually helped our unfunded liability. So while that wasn't thrown out, just the retro was, but the prospective was not. And so that has helped. But even that was hard to do. So again, our principles haven't changed. It has to be legal and fair. And I think the balanced responsibility mantra is going to be really important for me. How do you solve this where everybody contributes to what I think is a statewide problem? It's not a public employee problem. It's not just a state problem, because it's also a local problem. How does everybody contribute to the problem?